Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are talking about how the squeeze is upon us, how shorts never closed above $500, and many more in this video. First, we're taking a look at this. Been a long time since we have seen 8+ days to cover, down to 2 short-only institutions. On the 5-year weekly time frame, we have the 50/100 EMA carrying towards each other. So when you take a look at the stats for AMC, what we can see here right now is that the days to cover is actually increasing, but yet when you see that the firms who are short only has gone down to actually 2 firms. Of course, there are still some who are both long and short and of course hedging, but is that really the case? Once again, remember when we take a look at this, these are of course some self-reported data, and that is obviously is going to be bigger than this. What I've always said is that the short interest in which we are seeing on AMC is the very minimum. It's what the institutions want to show us and not what it actually is. Now, but there's still some good things to obviously take away from this. There's some things that we need to look at, which is about understanding the fact that there are only 2 short institutions only. Now, firstly, is that the case? Well, in my opinion, I don't think so, because there are definitely firms who are trapped in this play, who are obviously holding on to the synthetic shares, the offshore shares, who are not reporting it and we don't know of. But another way you can look at this is about understanding that if firms have increase their long positions and we're seeing how the short positions have been decreased, well, it actually gives us an understanding of what institutions' outlook on AMC is, despite all these articles may tell you. What we have seen is, of course, all these news articles telling you that you should sell AMC, that AMC is going to go bankrupt, that you should never buy AMC. But when you take a look at the institutions, clearly they are doing a very opposite. And so for institutions, we are seeing them actually increasing their long positions. Now, going back to, is it actually the case of only 2 firms shorting? Well, we have seen how some firms who short AMC are obviously both long and short. And we know that there are perhaps just some firms who are not actually showing their positions because of these swaps, because of the FTDs, etc., etc. Then when you can take a look at what Charles V. Payne is saying, so after everything we've seen on AMC and all the stats about understanding how institutions want to long AMC, about how they are actually, despite seeing everything, we are seeing how shorts are panicking. You can see short squeezing is upon us. I am pumped. I love the smell of smart money scrambling to buy stocks, and I already own them at much cheaper prices. So this is what Charles Payne is saying. Now, of course, what we have seen recently is the understanding that AMC was obviously cheap at one point, GME was cheap, and even at this current point, I still think that AMC is cheap. But when we compare it to before, we obviously understand where we are at. But more importantly, when we compare AMC to its potential. Now, Charles Payne obviously talked about how owning at cheaper prices. AMC is cheap in comparison to 2 different factors. Firstly, is AMC cheap in comparison to the fundamentals, the true price discovery of where AMC should be? Well, in my opinion, I think so, because I've said how AMC should be at least 10 times, 50 times above where it is right now as of what we are seeing. So in comparison to the fundamental reasons, AMC is undervalued. And then when you compare it to the squeeze, then we know that it's even more undervalued. It talks about how much potential we can get. Obviously, I talked about how in comparison with fundamentals, we are 50x, below where we should be. And so it means that, again, we can get that 50x return just based off fundamentals, which is already an insane return. But when we take a look at where it is comparing to how a squeeze will let AMC go all the way up, we're looking at a 500, a 5,000x on return. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying that is extremely cheap. And you can see how other people are also increasing, as we are seeing the calls option for AMC, we're seeing the open interest go up. Essentially, this goes back to what we said earlier with just how institutions are, of course, actually buying AMC. And again, we talked about how people have realized that the short squeeze season is upon us, is that people are understanding the opportunities that are here right now. People are making sure that they can get in. And right now, this time, what we have that's different from the past is that normally when you get an opportunity like this, it's always institutions who hop in first and they benefit from this. But for AMC, for GME, because of how it has been, it's the retails that's obviously going to benefit the most from this. Yes, there will be some institutions who can perhaps get in, but they have definitely not been able to have as much of this action as the retail has had, because we have obviously seen this opportunity for so long now, and obviously being DCA or whatever you have done, and that obviously increases our potential return. And again, just an example of this, you can see how people are obviously buying again from Citadel. We have him buying 100 shares. And remember, this isn't his first share purchase. This is him buying another 100 shares. Now, is 100 shares going to force the short squeeze? No. But what it does is that it forces the short sellers to then create another 100 synthetic shares. And that 100 synthetic shares will in the future obviously all add up, and it actually increases the floor price. And that's what we've always talked about with how even if you are buying one share, even if you're only buying 2 shares, right, whilst it may not seem like a big and grand amount, but what it actually does is it forces these short sellers to create these synthetics, which is costing them money, which is increasing not only the possibility of the squeeze in terms of how much in terms of how quick we can get it, but actually it also increases about the return for when the squeeze happens. And so that's why we've said, and you can see from another example, another 125 shares bought this morning, and already with 2 particular users, we already have them buying over 200 shares or 225. And in one of the posts that we talked about in the past before was how actually, retail investors only need to own around 130 shares. And that would equate to, again, if every single retail investors all held 130 shares, that would equate to the flow. And what we already have is 225 shares bought by 2 people, which again is adding on to the positions that they've already had. So you can understand just truly how many synthetic shares has been created by the short sellers. Now, as always, this is ever financial advice, so do take it as a grain of salt. Make sure you do your own due diligence and research. And if we take a further look, is that reminder, shorts never closed on GME. Shorts never closed on AMC. Actually, they quadrillion down on more shorts over the 4.5 years. 2021 is like child's play compared to what's coming. MOAS is inevitable based on the fact pattern over the past 4 years. They thought the people would just walk away. They were dead wrong. And so this is obviously what we have to understand, is that a lot of people think that even if AMC squeezes or even if AMC sees an increase, it's only going to go to where it was in 2021. Now, what we have to understand is that so many things is now different from where we are now to where we were back then. When you take a look at already the fundamentals, AMC is in a way better position. When you take a look at all the potential possibilities in terms of the box office, in terms of how well AMC is doing, it's so much different than when it was, 4.5 years ago. 4.5 years ago, people were saying that the box office was going to die completely, that it was never going to recover. And now look at how it is. Now, another thing that's completely different is you have to understand that they have been creating synthetic shares. Again, there is no data to prove this, but from what we've seen, when we talk about people buying shares, it seems that they have been creating synthetic shares every single day for the past 4.5 years. And so what they were suffering back then was from a limited amount. What they have to suffer now when the short squeeze happens is all the hundreds of millions, billions of synthetic shares that they've actually created over these past few years. And that's obviously what's going to get them. And so this is what we have to understand about how well AMC will do. And what we can see is how XRT Lempool just hit 0 ahead of GME earnings. And so this is obviously, we're seeing the GME earnings, and what we are looking at is of course how they are trying to again suppress the price because they understand what's happening. And when we see things like this happen, it's just another reminder that they never closed. They never closed on GME, they never closed on AMC. Because if they did, why would they feel the need to do things like this, especially on earnings day? And another thing is that you have to remember, AMC was trading around $500 per share on a daily basis back in 2021, despite the company's fundamentals being significantly weaker than they are today. Given that the company's improving position in 2025, AMC's intrinsic value, excluding any short squeeze dynamics, can reasonably be considered well above $500 per share. So this is obviously going back to what we were talking about. Now, once again, you have to understand is that they've been doing this now for over 4.5 years. And it's why I talked about that. Firstly, when we do see it go up, it's going to go way higher. And when people say that it's only going to squeeze to where we were last time, again, I think that's only going to be showing what the true price of AMC should be. I think if AMC was to go to $500, it isn't because of a squeeze, but rather it's because they allowed AMC to show its true value. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching the video. I'll catch you guys next time.